Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is just a show where we take a step behind the GM screen, talk about games, game design, plotting, planning, the whole GM and game designer uh, discussion. This week we have two episodes planned. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Central. And this week we're talking about running games in an established canon setting. And then on Thursday we're going to be looking at one of my favorite new role-playing games, Forbidden Lands. But that's just a tease for next week. So, Bob, always good to see you in chat. Uh, got my something to drink as well. So, let's get into this. We had a question from one of our viewers that came up in the chat on Thursday, a gentleman by the name of, or whose username is Padre. And Padre is running a game set in the world of Isle, one of the cosms in Torg. And he is running this game as a kind of a prelude to the invasion. So, right in Torg, the different High Lords come together. They all invade Earth on their on day one, but all of them had a history before this happened. And so he is running the Uthurian, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but the rise of the High Lord in Torg before the Torg invasion happens. And so it kind of came up, hey, well, how do I do this when maybe not how do I do this, but one of the things he's thinking about is like the High Lord wins. The High Lord takes over the Cosm and then sets the stage for the invasion of day one. I don't know if he's planning on running day one and allowing a new group of characters to kind of funnel into there, or if his plan is to just end the game as kind of a D&D fantasy style game. Dark Lord comes to power, and then jump over to Torg. Hopefully, he'll be in the chat today, and we'll be able to discuss that with him. So, oh hey, Chris is in the chat this morning. Chris, I'm glad you're here. It's your first time here live because I'm going to use you as an example, a positive example. So the question we're discussing today is how do we as GMs run games when the canon of the world tells us something bad is going to happen. So when we know, Frodo is going to destroy the ring, how do we run a game in Middle Earth? When we know Order 66 is coming, how do we run a game about Jedi in Star Wars? When we know, when we know how the Battle of the Somme ends, how do we run a World War One sort of adventure? So that right there are these events that happen in the worlds that we love to play. And this typically happens in games where we are running in someone else's playground. So when you're running in Middle Earth or in a galaxy far, far away, when you're running in trying to think of other games, like when you're running in a historical setting, like right when Rome, if you're playing in a Roman game and you know that the Visigoths are coming, how do you handle this? So as a GM, there's sort of three ways I think you can do this. One, if you don't care about the canon, borrow from RuneQuest and Greg Stafford and just say your Forgotten Realms will vary, right? Maybe the players can stop the High Lord from rising. Maybe that is a goal. Um, maybe you're wanting to alter the timeline, or you don't care about the timeline past this kind of crisis event. That's sort of the easiest way to do it. Just say, hey, we're not canon may not unfold as we expect. The timeline is fluid, and depending on your actions, we may have another set of outcomes than the one that we're all familiar with. The second way to do it is the first time I saw this really well done. I've seen it done really well, and I've seen it done really poorly. So we'll start with the really well done way. Um, Wheel of Time, the role playing game, Wizards of the Coast put out a Wheel of Time role playing game many, many years ago. and they had an adventure called Prophecies of the Dragon. And essentially, what they did with it was you were playing heroes in the events of the first 3 or 4 books of the Wheel of Time. And what you were doing was every time there was a gap in the story, your heroes were the ones who filled in that gap. It's a really good writing technique, right? Like this is, a lot of people will say this is where we get most of our best ideas. When you're reading through a story and you're like, wait a second, what if I pry this open and try and explain it, and then you end up writing your own version of that story, but in your own world or in your own words. So essentially what happened was at each chapter, you were sent on a mission by the Aes Sedai or someone else, and what you discovered is you were at this place when this big battle happened, and you were aiding, your actions aided Rand and the other main characters. The flip side to this is the Dragonlance adventures from first edition D&D. You basically played as the main characters of the story, and they would have GM advice of, hey, if the players don't go here, then the world ends in X number of days. So in this case, what you're trying to do with your story is you're trying to find places where your heroes can be awesome and shine and aid or hurt the main story, with the acknowledgement that that framework is going to happen. The High Lord will take over Isle. The Jedi will fall. Another great example of this is why I'm really glad that Chris is in the chat this morning. Buddy Chris, we played a lot of games together, and he ran a spectacular Star Wars game set during the time of the original trilogy. And right, the New Republic, or the Republic has just fallen, the Empire is on the rise. And what we discovered is at each of the 3 points of the act, our heroes were being awesome, but we were doing things that once we figured out what was going on, there's just these beautiful reveals. Like, we were the team that I believe got the parts to build the ion defense cannon on Hoth. We were the team that went and stole the Imperial shuttle that then Han Solo, Leia, and Luke used in Return of the Jedi. So it was a really well done way of acknowledging the main story's not going to change, but finding ways for us to be a part of the main story while still having our own adventures and still having our own challenges and our own arcs and our own triumphs and defeats, but knowing that, hey, we're the reason that they got their missions done. Yeah, Chris does a great job with Star Wars games. Like, he just needs to run one on the Iconic Production channel. If you can hear me, Chris, you should. Yeah, no, it was spectacular. So then the last way to do it is sort of a I don't want to say defeatist, but there are some players and tables who may enjoy knowing at the start of the game, hey, we're going to play an Eregion. And you know what? It's all going to fall apart when Sauron reveals himself. We're going to play Jedi in the last months of the Republic, and not all of us are going to get out. We're going to play an Isle, but the High Lord's going to win. We're going to play in Erwa, and the No God is going to arise. There's something about the underdog story, maybe even knowing that you're going to fail, that provokes interesting game design choices and interesting player choices. Now, I think all of these come back to, you really should talk with your players, because at this point you're running a game in an established canon, and people are going to know that. I realize talk with your players is sort of like find a YouTube channel about gaming, and inevitably this is one of the first things they're going to tell you. But especially when running stuff like this, Bob and Chris both know I'm far more likely to run a game that is inspired by something than I am to run a game in that world or universe. So we wanted to do something Game of Thrones-ish, and I ran a Burning Wheel game set in um, our own world, but it had a lot of Game of Thrones influences and had the intrigue there in the political houses. Because I want that freedom. Even the one time I ran an official Game of Thrones, the official Song of Ice and Fire role playing game, we didn't play in the modern time. We went back to like when the Targaryens landed, and then we did was it the Blackfire Rebellion? I feel like that's actually a Warhammer thing. Chris will let me know if it's a Warhammer thing. But like I'm always looking for the gaps to fill in, because that's where that perfect intersect of player knowledge and player choice and agency kind of intersects for me. So yeah, those are kind of my three pieces of advice. Talk to your players. Be like, hey, I want to set this game in this thing. If your players don't know what's going on, like if Padres players have never played Torg and have no clue that they are playing in the prequel to a day one adventure, then that gives you some interesting options. At least for me as a GM, I would probably in that case go, hey, we are just going to play through this. The High Lord is going to win, but I'm going to make sure that the players get a massive victory. So maybe I introduce a lieutenant that wasn't there, and that while the High Lord's off doing their own things, this lieutenant is intrinsically a personal vendetta that the players have to go after. Thank you, Christopher. Always uh, Christopher is one of my many Jedi holocrons scattered throughout my gaming network, and his knowledge of Star Wars and Warhammer and World of Warcraft is not to be trifled with. So when I have questions, I just, hey, Bob, be careful. You're my comic book and Wheel of Time holocron. So just just know that you guys are wonderful repositories of nerdy knowledge that I rely on. I know we all love Christopher. So I would do it that way. I would have what is going on with the High Lord pretty far off screen. Maybe the players get to see things, maybe the players get to hear things, maybe the players are involved in some battles, because in the Isle history, there's just this wonderful story about how the High Lord actually looks like he falls and ends up possessing the queen and then resides within the queen's body for a while. So that could also be an interesting way for Padre to do this. Let the players be there. Let them engage with the High Lord's fall. Like, this is a unique part of canon where the High Lord seems to fall. And then maybe it's they have this massive victory. They think they won, and then the last arc of the game is them slowly uncovering the horror that this massively powerful entity has taken refuge within the body of their beloved queen. And then maybe I don't know that I would actually resolve that. That may be like, that would be a great fade to black moment when they finally realize what's going on and end it. Now, if you're not a fade to black, leave them on a cliffhanger, sort of wanting for more, I'm looking right at Bob and Christopher, because that's how our Exalted game ended all those years ago. And hey, Padre, good to talk with you. Yeah, Padre's here. Yes, Blackfire Pass was the battle where Sigmar won over the orcs. I am about to do a deep reread of all of my Warhammer books, so we may have to have a chat about that. But if you don't like the fade to black kind of cliffhanger ending, it would be a great way to then, the next arc of the story is the players dealing with the fact of how do we help our queen recover her body and recover herself. then leading right into the day one invasion, where then the queen sends her chosen agents across the Maelstrom Bridge to help defend this new cosm. Running games in canon, the last thing I'll say about it is there are two types of lawyers at the table, maybe three, because right there could be literal lawyers at the table, and that's the case. I've played with several lawyers in my game, and they're always delightful. Um, oh, perfect! That's a great way to do it. The final scene being a flash forward to Tolwyn's return after day one. I like that. I think that that satisfies both the acknowledgement of what happened in canon and the hope for the future. So you have rules lawyers, and again, rules lawyers are not a bad thing. I have enough people who enjoy the system side of the game uh, to where I rely on them. Um, right, I read a lot of role playing games. I design a lot of role playing games. Keeping all of the rules of all of the games separate in my head is sometimes difficult. But to the point where our buddy Luke routinely gets called out for same teaming, where he'll be like, actually, the rule is this. And it's a wonderful thing. Like, I enjoy it. Like, you can always take these things too far, right? That's when we talk about rules lawyers as being kind of a negative thing. That's when we're talking about taking too far. There are setting lawyers, of which um, I've never actually had a bad setting lawyer experience. I feel like I have heard horror stories of, well, like and we talked about Elminster, use that as our example before. And I love that we're now we'll wrap this whole thing up with some Warhammer discussion real quick, but setting lawyers can be a thing, and in that case, like I just like to point out that my setting will vary. Like I think your Glorantha will vary was possibly one of the greatest gifts that Greg baked into Glorantha. So yeah, when dealing with canon, just recognize you may have some setting lawyers who want to correct you not out of a sense of superiority, but out of a love for right. When we talk about canon in gaming and in fandom, it's because these are things that are really important to us. It's not a it's not a gatekeeping thing. It's not an exclusionary thing. It is a hey, we have sat and we have dwelt in this and we love this thing. And so there's got to be grace on both sides, right? Both for those of us who don't know the setting or the system as well to understand that the people who do want to explain it to us and engage with us on something they love, and for the people who are new to who are established in the fandom to realize, hey, let's have some grace for the new people to come in. Once we were enraptured with this thing and now we want to become a part of it, and we were guided and welcomed in, and we need to be just as welcoming back out. So that's our canon discussion, but I'm interested in what Chad is talking about as well, which is Warhammer. So first of all, I think everyone in chat can agree that the elves of Warhammer are the best, especially in the tabletop fantasy game, especially when playing against dwarves. That one was for Christopher. Um, hey, you bought my dark elves off me, I think, Bob. Um, so yeah, I have a deep and abiding love for the Warhammer world, the old world. Bob may call me to task on this, but I am not as big of a fan of Age of Sigmar rule set or world change as I am uh, of the old world. I mean, as you can see, kind of over here, this whole shelf is just Warhammer and Warhammer clones. There's something, I think Ben is the one who introduced me to this term, the grimsical nature of Warhammer. You have these deep, dark, abiding evils. You have the chaos gods, right? Chaos in Warhammer is just like Cthulhu in Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu, right? Cthulhu is going to win. Can you just kick the can down the road for several generations? Chaos is going to win. Age of Sigmar sort of proved that, right? Like, Chaos blew up the world. There's all there, right? The ever chosen will always be chosen. And it's up to the forces of law to basically say, not today, hopefully not tomorrow, but eventually. But there's also just this wonderful, whimsical, nature of Warhammer, right? The fact that uh, if you have not looked at the enemy within companion volumes, if you're just looking at the enemy within main storyline, the companion volumes have a lot of this grimsical nature to them. They sort of explain the behind the scenes. So one of the first NPCs you meet in uh, Enemy in Shadows is Baron Once Upon a Time. Baron Once Upon a Time, right? That's how it kind of starts. Um, there is a halfling cheese war in the Empire, or in the Enemy Within, that is called where there's a will, there's a way, Whey. The pun game in Warhammer, I think, is often unrepresented. Yeah, Ben Feehan introduced me to that term, Bob. I'm not sure if Grimsicle is an official Warhammer term, or if it is a Ben Feehan original, but I like that. Padre, I'll be honest, I have not dug too much into the Age of Sigmar setting. Actually, that's not true. I read through Soulbound, the Age of Sigmar role playing game. And I think what was so jarring for me is what I love about the old world is it's like rooted Holy Roman Empire, very grim, dark uh, setting. And Age of Sigmar feels far more like ultra high magic and ultra high fantasy. And I do love Planescape, so maybe I need to give it another shot because I've been told it's basically Planescape in the Warhammer ish universe. Um, right. So Bob loves corn. I used to. So when I play, I'm a Zinch. I'm a Zinch or Chaos Undivided fan. My my favorite Chaos Space Marine chapter and army that I've painted was my brain's just died. Oh, the Word Bearers, right? Lorgar, and right, any book by ADB, Aaron Dembski Bowden in the Horus Heresy is just a a must read. But I'll be honest, Bob, as I've looked at it, I used to think that uh, Zinch was the scariest of the Chaos Gods, and I think it's now Slanesh. I truly believe that this idea of passions unrelegated and all consuming is the stuff of nightmares for me. Um, yes, all right, Padre. I may have to do another reread of Age of Sigmar and Soulbound and uh, see if there's anything else that strikes me kind of with that lens, because right, you do have the different realms which access different planes, but Zane and I tried the starter set, and Zane just wasn't ready for measuring. That really frustrated him. So we went to BattleTech, and we've been playing a lot of BattleTech recently, and that has been a wonderful introduction to the wargaming world. The other ones I want to try, um, I've got Call to Arms. I'm painting up some minis for Call to Arms, which is Modiphius's just truly wonderful Skyrim uh, war game. And then I am a big fan of Frostgrave. I don't know if you guys have played Frostgrave or Oathmark. That's the new one that I want to try. So Oathmark, Frostgrave is sort of Osprey's and Joseph McCullough's really wonderful love letter to Mordheim, but with just a super slick set of rules. And then Oathmark is McCullough's love letter to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And what I love about it is you get 1d10 for each person in your front line up to 5. And then every rank behind it drops the target number you need to succeed by 1. So you're only rolling 5d10 at the most, and your ranks, as your guys die off, you actually get more. The unit gets weaker, but it feels a little bit more streamlined, I think, than Warhammer Fantasy Battles was. I think I will miss just rolling just massive chunks of dice. Bob, you just got to move down here, man. We'll play miniature games till our eyes bleed and our fingers are permanently glued together. The other great thing about Oathmark, maybe I need to do a video about Oathmark, is you set up a map, and so like Christopher gets the dwarf kingdom because Christopher, and Bob gets this other kingdom, and you have your capital. But as you start to grab land through your battles, right, you're like, oh hey, I'm going to go over to this part of the map, and I'm going to, Bob and I are going to fight over the river, and maybe I'm playing the elves and Bob's playing the humans. Whoever wins, if you control the river, you now get river trolls in your army as recruitable things. Yes, you can mix and match. You can, as you take over new thing, like if I'm the elf army and I capture the mill from Bob, now I can recruit human crossbowmen, I think is how it works. I'm also partial to it because my wife edited some of the Oathmark books. I mean, just, tiny little bit of bias there. Padre, we should talk Oathmark sometime. That would be delightful. I've got them. I've got the Oathmark books kind of sitting right here. Also, the miniatures for Oathmark, if you have not checked them out, I realize this is we're getting a little off topic, but North Star minis are just spectacular. I've got their dwarves, which Chris, you would love their dwarf heavy infantry. And I've got their gnolls. I ended up buying their gnolls to use for Takan at the table in my Jackals game. But North Star puts out some great fantasy minis for Oathmark. And the other nice thing about both Frostgrave and Oathmark is they're sort of this kind of wink and nod of, hey, we have our own miniature line, but really just bring what you already have. Warhammer minis, or, I've done Frostgrave with just D&D minis because it's just that simple. So, all right, well, that has been a discussion on... Ooh, I have to check out the Knights. I have not seen the Knights. I've also seen they've got some new guys coming out that really have a Bronze Agey feel to them that I'm probably going to pick up and kit bash together into something. But my cup of tea is done, and we have talked about canon gaming. We've talked about Warhammer. We've talked about Oathmark. We've talked about just a ton of things today. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Again, Thursday, we are going to be doing a review of Forbidden Lands. Bob, I really think you will love this game. It also, just the art is... I'm going to show off a ton of the art from the PDF and the map. It is a role-playing game with legacy components. As you explore the map, you are actually adding stickers to the map to show where adventure sites are. They've got tombstones for when characters die. You can mark them on the map. And each expansion, it starts with the core map, and then it's adding new regions to explore. And instead of an adventure path, it's got this really interesting campaign structure that we'll talk about. I think what I'm going to start doing with the reviews is go over, hey, what I love, here's why I think you should play it. And then from a designer's perspective, what are the unique bits that I love about this? So this has been Behind the Screen. I am JM. This is the Iconic Production channel. If you like what we do, please subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. These are the ways that the algorithms kind of show us to other people, right? On YouTube, definitely hit like if you can. Leave a comment. I always respond to comments. We'll be back on Thursday with more behind the screens. And if you really like what we do, please consider joining us over at the Patreon at patreon.com/iconicproduction. We have a Discord server that's only for patrons. We talk about a bunch of things. We throw up a ton of polls. You get to interact with the cast members from the Torg game and all of our other games. So yeah, until next time, I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screens, and I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one.